Big old trees fill us with fascination and awe. They're the best of the best in the genetic contest against disease, insects, and climate. At 300 years of age, the Nipisiguit red pines were no more than seedlings in 1715, when the region that now includes New Brunswick first became a British colony. As the decades passed, they were perhaps spared the axe and the chainsaw because of their split trunks. These trees were discovered in northern New Brunswick during the New Brunswick Museum's 215 Biota NB program, a project to inventory the biodiversity of the Nipisiguit protected natural area. They're the oldest of their species known in Atlantic Canada. Alida Karstad, a plein air wildlife artist, and Ben Phillips, a dendrochronologist with Mount Allison University and the Fundy Biosphere Reserve, and both Biota NB participants, were no less inspired than the rest of us when they craned their necks skyward to marvel at these red giants.
I'm Alida Karstad, and I live in Bishop's Mills, which is a little village south of Ottawa. I'm a naturalist and artist both. I've been coming to the Biota NB for about 6 years. I paint opportunistically, whatever comes up. I particularly like to do trees, old trees, and this one, looks like two pines, but really it's pine that's split in two and was growing up into two tops. And when I look up into the sky, I can almost feel how the pine feels with the wind blowing through its branches and the sun shining on its needles and its bark. And I can smell the pine, and all my senses are alive and awake when I'm painting outdoors. I'd much rather paint outdoors than in the studio from photographs. It was amazing to have a 2-week BioBlitz where there were specialists of all kinds of plants and animals and fungi and lichens and learning from each other. It's super exciting. And being the artist in residence at each of these events has been an honor. I try and do as many paintings as I can throughout the 2 weeks, and I like to vary what I do. I'm working in oils and in watercolors both. I think that protected natural areas are wonderful for New Brunswick. I'm thinking of the natural heritage. And it's nice to think that it's not going to be changed by people, that the changes will all be natural and we can learn from them. It's like a living museum, these protected natural areas, and to have the museum, the New Brunswick Museum, study them, it adds value to them.
I'm from Moncton, New Brunswick. I teach at Mount Allison University in the Department of Geography and Environment. I'm also the conservation scientist at the UNESCO Fundy Biosphere Reserve. I try to make it out to the Biota NB event every year. It's a great time. There's a lot of adventure that happens here, a lot of discovery that happens here, and it's just a great time to spend with lots of other scientists and folks from across North America that have really interesting specialties. So my particular specialty is dendrochronology, which is the science of tree rings. So here I've been going around to different stands in the forest. And I've been looking for mostly old trees and old growth forests. They're very hard to find these days, and areas like the Nipisiguit protected area is one of the only places you can find some of these things. So essentially, to find old growth forest, we have a few maps and tools here to identify maybe where some of those stands are, but often you need to go to places that are really inaccessible. So steep slopes, places that are far out of the way. But it's amazing how much of New Brunswick's actually been logged. But once we get into an area that does have some old trees, to find specific individuals, you really have to start looking for characteristics of old growth. And that is usually, for me, as a dendrochronologist, really the bark. Trees, as they grow, they exfoliate the bark over time, and then that creates new patterns in the bark, deep furrows and larger plates, and the color will change over time. Sometimes the lichens on the tree really are associated with old growth. So if you can look at the bark, find that type of thing, then the actual morphology of the tree, how big the crown is, what shape the branches are, that can really be a good indicator as well. And also a lot of the the other trees around it. So once you kind of identify some of these characteristics, then it's pretty you start pulling some tree cores using an increment borer, and then estimate based on that, and start collecting samples from around the area. So the other day we were looking for old white pine, and we actually came across what is likely going to be the oldest red pine that we know that's living. But generally, those trees live 150 to maybe up to 200 years, and this one, or we found two actually that are 300 years old. So really spectacular, tree to old growth tree to find here in the Nipisiguit protected area. And without these protected areas like the Nipisiguit, those old growth trees and old growth forests would likely be logged, and all of the other biodiversity that goes along with those ecosystems would not exist if we continue to kind of log and degrade the environment like that. So protected areas are very important, and this event by the New Brunswick Museum every year is really spectacular, and it's producing a lot of knowledge for New Brunswickers about what we have in this province and what's worth protecting.